Welcome to English Codebreaker. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into something, well, incredibly valuable for so many of you: how to truly master English. Specifically, we're focusing on how to rapidly expand your vocabulary and unlock genuine fluency. Our mission, really, is to cut through all the advice out there and give you a clear, practical roadmap, something to help you become more confident and articulate in English, all based on strategies that, actually work.
Exactly. And we're drawing insights from some really fantastic sources for this. There's a comprehensive guide on vocabulary building and also a really insightful look into an innovative approach to language learning. It's gaining a lot of traction. We really want you to walk away with not just ideas, but actionable, enjoyable ways to truly absorb the language. Think of it less like homework, maybe, and more like an exciting new adventure.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this right away because one of the core ideas that kept popping up in our sources is something called the input approach. Now, for someone who might be used to, the traditional grammar drills or memorizing endless word lists, this sounds a bit different. What exactly does this input approach mean for someone who really wants to improve their English?
That's a great question, actually,
Yeah.
because it is different from what many people imagine or what they experienced in school, perhaps. What's fascinating here is that the input approach really emphasizes absorbing the language through consistent, natural exposure. Think about a child learning their first language. They're not sitting there with a grammar book, are they? No, they're just soaking in everything around them, listening, observing. The input approach encourages you to do basically the same thing. Immerse yourself in English by listening and reading constantly rather than solely focusing on consciously memorizing rules or lists. It's really about letting the language just wash over you and properly sink in.
So, if I'm getting this right, it's less about forced memorization and more about becoming a kind of linguistic sponge. That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about how naturally kids pick things up. It's quite amazing. But okay, for an adult learner who might be used to a more structured way of learning, how do we stop this immersion from feeling, overwhelming or just unstructured? Like, are there pitfalls to just passively consuming content?
All right, you've hit on a really crucial point there. It's not just passive consumption, not at all. It's more about deliberate immersion. But importantly, without the constant pressure of translation or analysis. And when we look at the bigger picture, there are four key benefits that really stand out. These help keep it effective and manageable. First, it profoundly helps you develop your listening skills. That's huge. English is a global language, right? Spoken with countless accents, different speeds. And to communicate effectively, you really need to train your ear. By regularly listening to spoken English podcasts, TV shows, music, real conversations, you start to recognize the sounds, the rhythm, the intonation patterns naturally. And that's how you build real, genuine comprehension.
I can definitely see that. It's like your brain is building this huge internal sound library, isn't it? And the more varied sounds you feed it, the better it gets at identifying different accents and speech speeds. I remember when I first started watching British TV shows, honestly, half the words just sounded like a different language entirely. But now, after lots of listening, it's almost second nature. It's amazing.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
that leads perfectly into the second benefit, building vocabulary naturally. When you're consistently exposed to English inputs, you'll encounter new words and phrases in their authentic context. But here's the maybe counterintuitive part. It's not just about seeing new words once. It's about encountering them repeatedly, but in different authentic contexts. So your brain isn't just storing a definition. It's building this complex web of associations, meaning you learn the nuance of a word, not just its basic dictionary entry. That's why context is just so important. It's everything, really.
That clicks. Right. So you're learning words not just in isolation, but in their natural habitat, so to speak,
Okay.
which makes them so much easier to remember and probably use correctly, too, because you understand the situation they fit into. It's like learning the word rain check by actually hearing someone use it when they cancel plans, not just seeing it on a list. You get a feel for its vibe.
Precisely. Its vibe, its usage, its connotations, all of it. And third, the input approach helps you improve your grammar organically. The human brain is actually wired, it seems, to pick up language patterns through exposure. Think of your brain like a super sophisticated pattern matching machine, or AI, like you said. It crunches massive amounts of data, all that English you hear and read, and without you even consciously realizing it, it starts to figure out the underlying structures, the grammatical rules, just by seeing patterns emerge over and over. You don't always need to be consciously analyzing sentences. Your brain is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the background.
Wow, that sounds like music to a lot of learners' ears, I bet. No more complex grammar rules. But, okay, many of us were taught that grammar is the absolute foundation. You have to learn the rules first. Is there a point where conscious grammar study does become beneficial, even with this input first idea? Or can we truly rely on just soaking it up entirely?
Well, it is a natural process. And honestly, for most learners, especially intermediate to advanced ones like B1, C1 level, relying primarily on input gets you incredibly far. It builds that intuitive sense of what sounds right. Conscious grammar study can then become a really powerful refinement tool. It helps you maybe articulate why something sounds right or clarify those trickier exceptions. But it doesn't need to be the main engine of your learning. Your brain, honestly, does a fantastic job on its own if you give it enough input. And this brings us to the fourth benefit, which is maybe the most empowering one. Boosting your confidence in actually using English. Consistent exposure builds comfort and familiarity with the language. You just feel more at home with it. And that translates directly into improved speaking and writing abilities. You'll be far less likely to sort of freeze up when you need to speak. You know that feeling like suddenly forgetting the word for fork when you're trying to eat? That happens less.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So the payoff is huge then. You'll actually start thinking and responding in English more naturally without that awkward, slow translation step happening in your head all the time. It's like moving from slow motion communication to real time. That feeling of genuinely understanding and being understood without constantly second guessing yourself. That's gold. That's fluency, isn't it?
It really is. It's about making the language feel less foreign and more like a natural extension of your own thoughts, which naturally raises a really important question. How do we actually do this? How do we flood ourselves with English input in practical, actionable ways? Because that's where the real magic happens.
Great question. Let's get into some concrete strategies then. Let's start with reading, maybe, because reading is just fantastic for learning new words at your own pace. You can really take your time with a new word, try to work out its meaning from the context, and understand how it's used before you move on.
Absolutely. And when it comes to reading for vocabulary, a really fantastic starting point is popular literature. And I don't mean just novels. Think comics, graphic novels, even children's books. The illustrations offer incredibly helpful visual clues that really supports understanding. And for many popular titles, you can often find translations into your native language if you get truly stuck, which lowers the barrier. It makes the entry point very accessible and, crucially, fun. Don't feel like you have to jump straight into, I don't know, James Joyce or something.
Right. Start easy, make it enjoyable. And building on that, something as simple as reading relevant blog posts can be super effective. Find topics you genuinely enjoy, whether it's cooking, video games, travel, maybe even quantum physics if you're ambitious, and read blogs about them in English. It keeps your interest high, which means you're way more likely to stick with it. Plus, you're familiarizing yourself with new words in a context you actually care about. The best part, sometimes you're building vocabulary without even feeling like you're studying.
Exactly. Now, moving to listening. This is, how we all first learned words as kids, and it profoundly impacts how we learn to pronounce words correctly and use them with the right intonation. Music is a wonderful, immersive, and I think often overlooked way to learn. Find English language music in genres you love. Listen actively. Maybe try to pick out words or phrases. There's so many great websites with lyrics now, right? So you can follow along, connect the sound to the written word. It also helps you soak up pop culture, which gives you more things to chat about with English speakers.
Oh, definitely. And don't forget about attending events, even virtual ones these days. We're talking plays, sports matches, museum tours online, exhibitions, maybe even webinars or cooking classes conducted in English. You get to hear words used live in a really dynamic context, often with visual cues or the energy of the event helping you understand. It's a great way to feel part of the language community, and you might discover niche vocabulary you wouldn't find elsewhere. Plus, it's just fun. It's a break from textbooks.
It really is. Then, of course, there's watching. This is probably one of the most popular ways. It's very casual, generally relaxing, yet incredibly effective for learning. Think movies and TV shows. You get the benefit of visual cues, like with comics, but you also hear the correct pronunciation and intonation from native speakers usually. And a crucial tip here, really. Always try turning on the English closed captioning. Not subtitles in your language, but English captions. This combines your listening and reading skills, it activates multiple parts of your brain, and it really helps make the words stick more effectively. It's like having your own personal silent dictionary running in real time alongside the dialogue.
That's brilliant. I always recommend that too. It makes such a difference. And building on that idea of observing, what about just people watching? It might sound a bit quirky, maybe even a little strange, but just observing people conversing around you in real life, if you can, or even in videos, can teach you so much. How are they actually using their words? What subtle things can you learn about those words by observing their relationships or their mannerisms? I remember once seeing someone casually use the phrase spill the beans and the way they leaned in, all conspiratorially. It immediately clicked for me what it meant. The body language help. It gives you that deeper insight into nuance, doesn't it?
It really does. You start picking up on all these subtle cues that no textbook could ever teach you, the real-life context. And finally, beyond just passively or semi-passively, taking in input, we need to touch on proactive vocabulary building. This means actively looking for synonyms when you're writing or speaking, for example. If you genuinely want to expand your active vocabulary, you need to push yourself gently to actually use new words. Don't be afraid to try them out, even if you make a mistake. That's part of learning. Tools like online thesauruses or even some grammar checkers that suggest alternative words can be incredibly helpful. They help you find maybe the right word for a specific situation and expand your choices beyond the usual suspects you always rely on. It's about not just recognizing words passively, but truly integrating them into your active vocabulary so they feel natural coming from you.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, putting it all together, all these fantastic practical methods, reading comics, listening to music, watching TV with captions, even just observing people chat, they're all concrete ways to apply that powerful input approach we started talking about. It's not just about learning words in isolation on a flashcard. It's about learning them in action in their natural environment.
Precisely. That's the core idea. By consistently engaging with English through these diverse and importantly enjoyable channels, you're not just memorizing definitions off a page. You are, in a way, living the language. You're experiencing it directly, which leads to profound and lasting improvement that just sticks with you far more effectively than any flashcard ever could. You're not just learning English, you're kind of building a relationship with it.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. So just to recap our deep dive today, the input approach, that idea of massive exposure, combined with varied and enjoyable reading, listening, and watching activities, is really the pathway to genuine English proficiency and confidence. It's less about dissecting the language like a scientist, and more about embracing it, letting it become a natural part of your daily life.
Mm-hmm. And this maybe leaves us with a kind of thought-provoking idea for you, the listener, to consider. Perhaps the most effective secret to mastering English isn't about finding the perfect textbook or the one true grammar rule that unlocks everything. Instead, maybe it's about transforming every single English interaction you have, every song you hear, every show you watch, every blog post you scroll through, every casual conversation you happen to overhear, transforming all of that into a deliberate but also enjoyable learning opportunity. It's about recognizing that the world around you, which is increasingly filled with English, is actually your best, most vibrant, and often completely free classroom.
I love that perspective, the world as your classroom. So go forth, everyone, explore, listen, read, watch, and most importantly, enjoy the journey of becoming a true English codebreaker.